The topic of our next panel discussion is home where the hurt is? And of course, we have once again some interesting set of panelists with us. So let me, without any delays, let me introduce them. To begin with, we have Saikat Majumdar, who is her professor, English and Creative Writing, Ashoka University. Next, we have Debolina, a writer, teacher in Ramjas College. Next, we have Chitra Palekar, who's an actress, writer, founder member, Sweekar, the Rainbow Parents group, where my mom is also a part of this rainbow, and I'm so proud to have see her today. And next we have Jay Anand, a transman, singer, and a songwriter. And of course, it's moderated by none other than Adrija Bose, who's the associate editor, News 18. So yes, over to Adrija. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. Um, I want to start by saying, home, we've always been told, is a safe place. A place where you're comfortable, where you experience secure relationships, and most of all, it's a place where you find yourself. And like we just put it out, the pandemic changed our definition of home. It's not a memory or nostalgia or where we just dream of living. It's a concrete, safe place. And let's be real, home can be many things in our head, but without one that's built with strong bricks or one that's not enough for 12 members in the family, or one where you feel threatened, is it really a safe place? And with that, let's start with our discussion: is home where the hurt is? We have with us Debolina Dey, writer and teacher, Saikat Majumdar, author and professor, Chitra Palekar, actress, writer, and the founder member of Sweekar, the Rainbow Parents, and Jai Anand, very talented musician. So let's start with Debolina. Debolina, what is home or homelessness for you?
I, sorry,
Yes,
I'm sorry. I just unmuted. Can you just repeat that? You were stuck for a
yes,
minute.
yes. Did I stop? Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I wanted to start the conversation with you to understand what is home or homelessness for you.
Yeah, I think home has been a lot of things. I mean, let me start with the site, the physical space of home. I come from a very small town, Siliguri. That's where I have been born and brought up. That was home for me. I grew up in a big joint family. Um, and so home for me was initially where I grew up till I came to Delhi. When I came to Delhi and people asked me, where are you from? It was an easy answer to give. It was, oh, I'm from Siliguri. And during the vacation, and then I studied shadow lines and in the first year, and that confused notions. Do you go home or do you come home? So going and coming home. Then I went to Berlin, and in Berlin, when people asked me, where are you from, I was like, wait, what am I supposed to tell them? Just India? Or do I tell them about the places within that? So but then otherwise, when I think I spoke in the other panel and I said my queer journey has been 18 years in Siliguri and 17 years outside of it. And this year for me, home became a hyphenated word. It became hometown, because I realized that that space for me in Siliguri was no longer, um, it was no longer where my slippers are. It's no longer where I can quarantine. As an adult, I don't fit in there. And these 17 years living in Delhi, I have grappled with the idea of homelessness and queerness. Queerness is the first phase of queerness is about grappling with that initial home, the idea of the family. Where do you belong? I don't belong here. I don't belong there. Where do I belong? So also the precarity of the actual homelessness. Um, I mean, this is something that I think my own parents went through when they had a love marriage, anti-caste love marriage. They said because they had a love marriage, they had to make it work. So it happens with other kinds of loves as well that are going against the family. Is if you don't, if it doesn't work, between the idea of home as a safe space versus the precarity of homelessness. So all of these things, I think home is as much an idea as it is a safe space. And because of COVID and because of the precarity of the disease itself, because it is reducing us to our bodies and material spaces, we are experiencing it as like that safe space. Where is that safe space? Where do you go to for quarantining? So yeah, I mean, that is what home is for me. You are muted. Adrija, you're muted.
Yes, I forgot. Thanks. Saikat, I wanted to ask you the next question because Debolina was talking about, homelessness and safe spaces. So, with the onset of the pandemic and the lockdown, we saw migrants walking back to their home. It's the first time a lot of people actually saw migrants. Students couldn't go back home, and many were forced to go back home, right? To home. So when there's no choice of home, would you call that homelessness? Wanted to ask Saikat this question.
Hi, thank you, Adrija, for the question, and thank you, Rainbow, for having me back. I must say, in its second year, Rainbow has already become a bit of a home, and this time it's a virtual home, so it's always great to be here. I think, Adrija, that's a very beautifully put question. That is home. It brings up the first issue: is home a choice? Now, most of us, I mean, are lucky enough to be born into a home, and when you're born into something, you don't really choose it. Of course, later in life, again, many of us, I wouldn't say all, are faced with the choice with which to make a home. And that, again, is very complicated because that brings up things like nature of desire, nature of the way society acknowledges those desires. So I think the question of choice with home is always very problematic. I mean, we've often this word is used with respect to migrancy and immigration. But I think if you look closer, in a very micro sense, home in a very private way is also kind of caught. I think with the pandemic, first we have to all acknowledge our privilege that all of us who can sit here and have this Zoom conversation, have this Zoom literary festival are incredibly privileged speaking in English. We saw, you're absolutely right, many of us, the visual representations of migrants walking back was a huge jolt. And I think for somebody who works in the world of higher education, this was also extremely painful because, again, the switch to online classes really laid bare the question of privilege. We all, many of us in Delhi remember last month when a student of Lady Shriram College, Aishwarya Reddy, committed suicide because her family was too poor to buy a laptop. And I remember the poet Ranjit Hoskote tweeted, the language was very moving, that it fills me with rage to think that in a country where the children of rich families skip online classes to catch up on their gaming, a person had to kill herself because she couldn't get a laptop. And the stories have kept coming. We've dealt with these stories all around. The boy in Kashmir who had to walk 2 hours to get an internet connection that was strong enough to support their classes. The girl who had to get up on the rooftop where the signal was the strongest, where she could actually attend classes. There are families who their only device was the phone. And this is obviously at the same time where a class of people are having Zoom parties and binging on Netflix and PlayStation, everything. So I think the pandemic has really opened up the disparity. I mean, I think, in a way, data is the new wealth. Who has data? Do you have data enough to just make a call or a WhatsApp, or do you have data to download Fortnite and Minecraft and everything and sort of make your whole room? So this has become really kind of, and we've had, I think, all through summer at Ashoka, we worked a lot. I mean, I have to say we are lucky enough to have a student body, many of whom come from middle class and above families, but we still have students from remote parts of the country, from poor households, and we really worked very hard to bring many of them back to campus. So for many of them, actually turned out campus was a better home than the kind of real home, because there's so many issues. Often one thing we've seen during this pandemic, even the question of sexual abuse of children and young people have come to the forefront, to say nothing of people who come from very disturbed areas, who come from poverty where bandwidth is. We have students from Afghanistan. So this, a lot of thought kind of go into it, but it's not just about, sort of the sheer financial thing. I think by missing out, by being forced to being at home, students are missing out on a big part of the college experience. I mean, I think the academic content is relatively undisturbed. We can deliver academic content online. That is not a problem, at least in the humanities and the social sciences. But it's the time of growth. It's a time of personal experience, even sexual experience. And especially for residential campuses, this is a huge kind of time. Of course, this has affected adults too. I think the word Atmanirbhar took on all kinds of jokes around being Atmanirbhar, when you can't go out of home. But, and the fact that people who only had households based on socially recognized desires, or those who were bold enough. So what happened to people with other kinds of desires, for whom now suddenly those desires had no legibility? But it's problem. But I think it's still harder for people, for young people, for students, for whom sexual identities or preferences are still building up. They're discovering themselves, they don't know. And a big part of the discovery process is the campus, where they form relationships, where they form networks, where the desires take root. And often, sometimes with students for whom the desires are not easily legible to the students and the parents. So I think it's almost like, literally, how do you come out when you can't step out of home? I mean, both metaphorical and real. I mean, do you continue to live in the closet, because you can't bring your desires even to the living room? So obviously you're kind of, getting stuck there. I think what we've realized, in this pandemic, is that home is a kind of a part of a dialectic. It's one side. Home makes sense when there are streets. Just the way we talk about being homeless in the world, you also can't have the home unless you have the streets. And suddenly, again, I acknowledge the privilege, because there are people who are literally out on the streets. But when you're outside, when that outside space is completely gone, and I remember a friend of mine, Rituparna Roy, put up this Facebook post, really moving, that sheer number of people who are unhappy stuck at home, elderly people who get the refuge when people are, other people are out, the children who are truly happy only in school, even couples who are sort of caught in loveless marriages, to say nothing of people whose desires don't quite fit in with what society, has for it. And I think this is a huge tragedy. But I think most of all, I think we should remember that homelessness, this has been a biggest tragedy on people with different abilities, different desires, and most of all the poor and the disempowered. I mean, any situation, the poor is, obviously at an disadvantage. But I think in many ways, the kind of virtual technology that we so easily inhabit because of our class and literacy. I was thinking of something Debolina said in a previous panel, that capital is not just sort of money or industrial capital, but it's also cultural capital. And she used the expression digital capital. The digital capital has served us so well, that even that you were having this comparison, this conversation here. But for a lot of people, that digital capital, really, I mean, data has turned out to be a big divider. So I think we have to be mindful of, what this has meant. And the reason I emphasize this is that even after the pandemic, hopefully, when we get our lives back, many of these things will stay with us. And as we move ahead, we have to remember who we are keeping behind or whom we are taking along. I mean, we have to make sure, no other student ever dies for the want of a virtual technology, because it's very easy to say that, oh, we know all about Zoom now, we can do all of that stuff, we can, but wait, hang on a minute. There are a lot of people for whom this doesn't work quite as well. So that's very important to remember.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Saikat, for that. During what you were talking about, I reported a bit on domestic violence, and many queer people I spoke to during the pandemic told me that they felt suffocated. Suddenly, they couldn't dress the way they wanted to, or couldn't talk to the people they wanted to. They just couldn't be themselves at home. Jay, my next question is for you. What is home for you? And as a trans man, how have you discovered home?
Hello, everyone. Firstly, I think in my case, it has helped me, the pandemic in general, to get a better understanding of my home. Because once you're put in that box, when you're constantly with your family, either you give in or you give up. So for me, it pushed me to get out of that place and be myself and confront to my family, okay, no, I have to make this move for me. And I was thankfully in a place where I could, financially or otherwise, so I could make that move. But I know for a lot of people it hasn't been. And I think it's also part of the process. When you talk about the journey of finding home, it's more or less about your experiences and not just that one place you are in. So, whether you are traveling, which has been in my case because of the shows I have to play, or even if you just go out, like Saikat was saying before, that university allows a lot of people to explore and they finally enter into adulthood and they can explore those options. So it's just about getting out there, meeting new people. Like, I'll give you an example. I was in US, and for me, I didn't know there's not enough literature available for us as teenagers to identify as a trans man. So I would just say I'm interested in girls, and people would label me as gay. And I never questioned it, but I never said either or. And while I was in US, my one of my colleagues, he asked me, okay, so what pronouns do you prefer? And for me, it was like mind blown. Can I do that? Like, I have that option. And that's, I think that's why I say it's the people I've met, or the experiences I have had, who have showed me the path to be my own self and get comfortable. So home is within first. When you're able to identify and accept who you are, and that's when you can start looking for home in an external environment.
Right. Thanks, Jay. Um, Chitra, I wanted to know from you, as a mother of a queer daughter and as the founder of Sweekar, where you've met generations of parents of queer children, what is home for you?
Well, before I say that, I have to say how pandemic affected me because I'm born in 47 and live alone. So what, as Saikat said, uh, all the news about migrants, everything I had to go through, a scroll or something, or and about even for my Sweekar people, or for my community, LGBTQI community, because as a mother, I think I'm also part of that community. But uh, all that I could only get through young, what shall I say, people who were activists or something. They would phone me and they would tell me. And living in 8 months like that, totally alone without any help, just was one good thing was that I realized that I'm quite strong and I survived. Anyway, saying that, let me go further. Uh, uh, you know, about home, my idea is completely what everybody felt, Debolina and all, because though I was the eldest of the three daughters and born with independent India, 47, I was treated with love, given all the freedom of choice. Later, when we grew up, whoever we could marry, all three of us. I mean, I never knew any sort of repression or force. I just grew and flowered exactly as you would all like everyone to be. Also, my idea of home was somewhere where you belong, and because that was my experience. You belong, you just say what you want, you express yourself freely, and you choose whatever you want. You argue with your parents, you debate. Sometimes you give in, sometimes they give in. That was home to me, where you come to be protected from the outside world. because even if you are heterosexual, you need protection very often, those things. Now, I brought up my child in the same way, but I won't say what home is to her. She has to answer. Then what happened was that, unfortunately, I realized that many parents, they don't have the same ideas which I have about home. That it is where you give only your love, you accept your children as they are, And this happened in a very weird way. I had signed a petition, Supreme Court Parents Petition. But since my daughter, after coming out, when she was accepted immediately by me and the whole family, she went abroad to study. So I was not in touch with all the community people. I mean, because there was no one to introduce me. But after I signed that petition, I was invited for a celebration party. So I went there. I wanted to see this world. I was very curious. Okay, what is this world, And so our gate crashed. And when I went there, what I saw was that people knew. So they came to me, youngsters, they started hugging me, thanking me. Up to that was okay. And then they started saying, wish you were our mother. I wish, my mother had also accepted. To tell you very honestly, I was quite taken aback at that time because I really didn't know that people are rejected in such large numbers. Few, yes, but not like that. And so I was quite shocked. I was even angry with all those parents of those children. And I said, how can they do that? But I realized that, later when I came back, it was all that scene was haunting me. Then slowly, as I was interacting with more and more youngsters of LGBTQ plus community, and then I met other parents too. And at that time, I realized that we all parents come from different backgrounds. The way we are brought up was different. To each one, the home was different. So the parents who reject, maybe it's not that they don't love. It's that they are so scared. Maybe when the children come out, they get into closet out of fear. I mean, this is how I thought. And I thought that in that case, one can talk to them. One can tell them how our children are happy and they're growing, flowering. And that way, it is possible, just possible that they might get transformed and accept. And we must try that. We must keep trying that. As I said, I met other parents, some of the parents who had also accepted their children, and they were also thinking on similar lines. Because, if you're happy or not, it is not good enough. You want everybody to be happy. You want all the children to be accepted by their parents, and that everyone should live happily ever after. That's how I dream always. Therefore, I and the others, with Sridhar Rangan's help, in February, just 3.5 years ago, we started this parent support group called Sweekar, the Rainbow Parents. And now, from parents of 10 children, now we are 80 parents all over India and even abroad. And we will try after the pandemics to go into the regional places and all that. So what we do in Sweekar, you see, because everybody was talking of pandemics, even Parva, I've seen the film, it makes one feel as if pandemics created all this. But according to me, it's not just pandemics. It is the parents who have been rejecting the children are the real root cause of the suffering. I mean, this is my opinion. Others may or may not agree with that. And so what we do in Sweekar is we don't preach, but we talk to the parents, we share our experiences. All of us say what happened to us. Many parents who have now accepted fully have gone through traumas in the beginning. And then how did we come up, we cross those traumas. So we tell them that by merely putting our love for our child about everything else, nothing else. So if we put our love above our neighbors, priests, religions, our in-laws, other family members or whoever, then we can have that strength. And when they see that the children of the parents who have accepted and how they are, my child is academic. She's a professor in Fremantle, University of Western Australia. And her subject is gender and sexuality, by the way. She always gives me hints when I'm on a panel. Because I'm a heterosexual simple mother. So talking with academics is a bit scary for me. What we do is we tell them, and we realize that many times they are scared and they reject, not because they were born homophobic, but because they are not aware of things. And nowadays young parents go on internet, but internet can give you wrong information. It can scare you sometimes. You should know how to take that information. So what we do is we provide them information. We even have to explain what is L, what is G, what is B. How would they know unless they are told? So this is how we go on. We even get experts to talk to them, and we always say all this will be confidential. If you want to even curse your children, you can do that in front of us. It's okay. Because when you do that, when you cry, you come out with all the doubts you have, then you will become clean and you will accept your children with lots of love. This is what we do in Sweekar, and we are a family now, all the parents, and we are really trying to create that each parent is trying to create a secure, safe home, not only for his or her child, but also for other children in the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Chitra. Debolina, I wanted to move back to you because you said something on the lines of discovering queerness also. And I read in an interview that till about 5 years back, you were in denial about your queerness, but you discovered it through a process. Would you say one needs to feel at home to be able to discover oneself, one's sexuality, one's queerness?
Thank you for that question, Adrija. Actually, when I was listening to Saikat and all of you guys, Chitra and all of you, I forgot to, this is something that I've been saying for a very long time. I think that as an academic, when I look at the idea of home, it's been my journey, but it's always been throughout my journey ever since, I've not really hidden, but how much do you come out and to whom and for whose advantage, right? So it's been a gradual process. If my biological parents are the point for me, to say that I've come out finally, it happened 3 years back. But for me, the idea has been that the idea of home is considered to be a private space, because in our heads, we have the public versus the private, whereas queer people and whatever else queerness is attached to have to deal with the public, private, and the secret. And the problem is a home is somehow not the place for secrets, because we can only think of in these two binaries, which is the public and the private. And I'll tell you so in some ways, what I hear is we are talking of families, we are talking of closets, but what are we talking of in terms of ideas, right? That is there some part of us that we cannot feel accepted, right? That we don't feel accepted in the home. So for me, I remember my father, we were a family of 3, he would sometimes, hide a shirt, new shirt he's bought, from my mother. And I would always wonder why the family, if it is a space of love and nurture, why does he have to hide a shirt? It's a new shirt that he's bought. And I personally think that the family has a tendency to co-opt us as functions. You know, your father, so your father for the rest of your life, your mother for the rest of your life. As a child, you're fulfilling the functions of a child. And for me, queerness is a rebellion against those archetypes of are you forever this function that you grow up with. So for me, I would say that my own journey with my own queerness and home has been this gradual, it's like unfolding the petals of a rose, you know, and seeing the bud inside it. It's been layers and layers, actually. My mother at some point said, my mother, I'm her only child, and she likes to think of me as a best friend. But I told her at some point that, you know, you're the last person to have known that I'm queer. And why is that? You know, and why did I feel that fear that I could not confide in you? And honestly, I only came out to them after I had my own home. I had the means of having my own home. And as much as I'm close to my family, I critique it deeply. Uh, as much as I glorify it, I tell them that you guys are the last people I came out to. And I'm not proud of that. You know, I wish it was different. I wish for other people it's different. What Chitra said, I wish it's like what it is for Chitra. But I'm also aware that there have been other struggles that have been far more difficult. So I am privileged in, you know, like Saikat was saying, that we need to. So I think I'm somewhere, I will not say that I've been in denial of it and that it's been a discovery. It wasn't a moment for me. It's not this moment. It's not like this new land that you found. No. Even within the community, my own negotiation of queerness. Queerness is that space of exile in our psyches. Sometimes it's what we will not be. So in the morning panel, what I was hearing is when a lot of older queer people, activists were saying that we are not this, we are not that. I don't know if it is the history of refutation, right? Sometimes we are what we are by refuting what we are not. And I think for me, one of the spaces for critique, and it is not simply, and critique is not simply about either refutation or glorifying, right? It is to take that concept and mold it in a way that allows space for all of us to exist, that allows these differences within the home to exist in a peaceful way without turning people into social functions. So for me, it has been that journey. You're mute. You're on mute, Adrija.
Yes. So, but when you came out to your parents, eventually you didn't initially want to, but then what was that process easy?
It wasn't easy. No, it was not. None of it was easy. It wasn't a moment. It wasn't, I came out in a way that I'm not proud of. I told them I was asexual. I could not bring in the sexual without feeling ashamed. And I lied to them. My mother asked me while growing up many times whether I was gay. Sometimes I did not want to tell a lie. Sometimes I told a lie. Sometimes I was lying to myself. I was battling internal homophobia. You know, it's a difficult life. It's not easy. I mean, I might be here on a panel speaking about it and making it seem very easy, but it hasn't been easy, you know. It has not been easy. It is not easy, firstly, to live alone in Delhi,
Okay.
uh, doing an ad hoc job and talking of your queerness. It's none of it is easy, but it is rewarding. It is like people, you know, bringing up children say that, you know, it's not easy, but it's rewarding. So it is rewarding. It is intensely rewarding in terms of the journey. So it has been a journey. It has been a gradual journey of self acceptance. There are points that you accept, and then you realize there is so much more to do in terms of acceptance. So yeah, I mean, you know, for me, one of the journeys of home was my first college, my college where I went to study, and then going back there as a teacher and seeing the difference there. For me, the cycle or the circle is an important metaphor to hold on to rather than linearity in terms of the journey. I keep going back to places of hurt and I see what has changed. because that for me is important. For me, it is important not to quit. For me, it's important not to dismiss love. For me, it is important not to distance myself, but distance myself when it's hurting. So these are strategies of survival. It works sometimes it doesn't work, but it's not easy for sure.
Right. I love when you said queerness is a rebellion against archetypes. I'm taking that with me. So I wanted to ask to Saikat, talk about your book a little bit, Scent of God. It tells the story of an adolescent boy, same-sex love affair, coming of age. So, and against the backdrop of an ashram, which becomes, I think, somewhat home, an unlikely home for the protagonist. How did you build on this idea?
Yeah, thank you, Adrija. I think that book is probably my most important connection to these conversations. Books come from very wild places, very strange places. And this novel, The Scent of God, came from a memory of a place I knew, a boarding school run by a monastic order by monks. But the world in which the book came out was a very strange world. For one thing, it came out just a few months after the decriminalization of homosexuality, after Article Section 377 was shot down. So the book very much became part of the celebrations. But at the same time, the other element of the novel was, saffron, the Hindu order, and the book came out in a nation where Hinduism had become very militarized. This wasn't, the memory from which the book was written. So I think it's very strange that we write books from very wild places, and yet once they come to life, we see the spirit of the age in them, that we have been unconsciously touched by the spirit of the age, even if we think that artistic creativity is a very private process, which it is, but that private process is also part of this much more public thing. And I think, you're right, that the ashram in the novel is a very strange kind of a home, because it did bring a lot of strange things together. I mean, for one thing, what does it mean when you bring students up in a religious boarding school, religious idea? And I think many of us who've even been to Catholic schools know the idea that the idea of sin, the idea of strong flagellation, even a certain kind of physical punishment. And Catholicism especially is more interesting than Protestantism here, because it's a more sensory religion. I think the masses, but I thought nobody had written about this in the Hindu context. In the Hindu context, what does it mean? And I think Hinduism is actually an even more sensory religion. The politism, and it's sensory in a very problematic way. I mean, the way its sensoriness appears to a Dalit person is very different from the sensoriness it appears to a Brahmin person. But in a neutral sense, it's very sensory. The saffron, the kind of incense, all of that. And what I found very interesting is it's also in a boarding school context, it's sensory in a sexual way also. So all these boys, they are sort of approaching puberty. Their bodies are changing, and they're sitting in prayer. They're praying, and at the same time, their hands are touching each other. Their knees are touching each other. So in a strange way, sort of religion becomes sexualized. Religion almost becomes a sexual experience, and I always think of the kind of ending of The Sound of Music, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen the movie, like where she's sort of the gates of the monastery are closing, and then she's going away, and and you're leaving that. And I think that's such an easy binary, that you go to the monastery and you leave desire behind, or you leave celibacy behind, or there's the world of marriage. And it's a simple binarized world that, obviously it comes from a world where desire is understood primarily in heterosexual terms. That desire is something that, and all this whole narrative about monastic celibacy, that, oh, you must be celibate, and that's simply because, oh, it's celibacy means avoiding the company of women. Even the whole sort of controversy over the Sabarimala temple that we saw, was that, oh, this god cannot be in the company of a menstruating woman, because that's desire. But he's surrounded by men, and this male company that is somehow not seen as part of desire. So obviously our construction of desire is so heteronormative that even the order I kind of loosely model the book on, the mission. The word often is used in, those of you who follow Bangla will understand the word Kamini Kanchon. So Kamini obviously meaning women and Kanchon meaning gold. So the whole idea that women are the kind of this sin. And I play with this idea of women and gold in the novel, that this whole construction of desire can only be in terms of women. But okay, when you enter a brotherhood, I mean, are you really giving up desire? Are you really giving up, or are you entering a different realm of desire, different space of desire? And these are questions, I hope, those of you who haven't read it, I don't want to give out the ending, but in a sense, the idea is that you give up home to enter a monastery. But do you enter a different kind of a home? In the same way, you give up desire to enter a monastery, but do you embrace another kind of desire? And these are, I think, very dangerous questions, very explosive questions, which I think has put the novel at the center of some sort of fairly warm discussions, that whether it's okay to associate monastic life with a certain kind of desire, whether it's okay to understand celibacy in terms of things. But I mean, again, you don't write novels because you're driven by ideas. You write by novels because you're gripped by the sheer sensory power of an experience, and then how you make sense to that experience, how you craft a narrative. And then when it comes out, you realize, oh my God, the world, it's a strange world. I mean, it has relationships with the world I never thought it did. So what seemed completely wild seems in some ways very crafted. So it's a very strange process. But thank you for that question.
Thanks, Saikat. Uh, Jay, in the previous question, you were telling us that you travel a lot for your performances. So, home, I suppose, has often been inside your suitcases. Where have you felt most at home and why? To Jay?
I I think I'm still finding it. It's under process, and that's my Instagram handle as well. It's J in process. So I think it's just associating with that. But for me, coming to terms with the idea of home, even while I was still in India, was okay. If I move somewhere abroad, if I go to US, if I go to Australia, I know people are more open about this. It's a safe place. So it was always outside of India. And when I moved there, I still missed the people back home. I did not have friends. I did not have family. So even though I was finding myself in that time by myself, I was still missing the connections and the culture I had back home. So I would keep shuttling and spending that life in a suitcase, as you said. But it's again, that's why I say, like, I'm in the process of finding it, because I still find myself comfortable in terms of the political scenario, or in terms of the family here, that okay, they will never understand this, or how much ever you try. And that's what I think my family is also done. If you want to do this, go back, do whatever you want, don't do it here. How will your sister's life get affected? The younger one won't get married. What will the people say? Right? They are so they want to keep it in a box, even if they agree or do not agree. But they're like, if that's what you are and if that's what you think, put it in a box and take that box with you. But do not put it out here, because for we have to live here and you can't be yourself while you're here. But at the same time, you should have those cultural values, those connections, and those connect to your family, which they perceive as home. Because if something goes wrong, as Chitra was saying before, you want to be protected from the outside world. So it's that fight which leads me to, in a way, even run around and find that place which I can call home. But I haven't found one yet.
So, have
So
you not felt at home while performing or traveling?
uh,
Have there been moments?
even while I have been performing, I have performed by my assigned gender and by my given name. It's now over the last 6 months where I've started, like, no, I have to associate myself with who I am. When I'm on stage, I should be able to share stories which are personal to me, because that's how I write my music. So it's actually last week I had called my distributors that, okay, I want to change my artist name to J. Like I'm done with it. So it's that shift for me is happening now during the pandemic when I'm not being able to go out. But I think that virtual situation has helped me build those relationships with people because behind the screen, I still felt safe. That, okay, I can be there, and if there's someone who doesn't like it, I can always shut them out. So it was a safe place. And now I've found people which are comfortable with me being me. And especially when you're a performer and you're on the run, you are always surrounded by people, you like it or not. And it becomes special in the entertainment industry. It's important because people are the ones who you are entertaining. And if I am still going by my given name, I am not being myself. So people are still not relating to who I am because I am not relating to who I am. And everything is it's shifting, it's in folds, it's a journey. So that's what's happening at present.
Right. Thanks, Jay. So, while we are talking about acceptance, Chitra, my question to you, and we have very limited time left. So, you were one of the first people to accept your daughter when she came out to you, and that was way back in 1993. And, inspiring many Indian parents to do the same. So, how did you build a safe home for your daughter and for yourself? And was that difficult?
You see, part of it I've already said. The way I was brought up, I brought up my child. I never bothered what clothes she wore. People have asked me, oh, she wore shorts and or you couldn't make out. I said, what nonsense. Even I wore shorts. But I'm heterosexual, she's lesbian. Clothes have nothing to do with it. The only, so you see, we brought her in complete freedom. I must say my ex about this. One thing I must say that when she came out, I was surprised because though, in 1993, there was, as you all know, there was no internet, no information. Even I think Humsafar was sort of just started and Bombay Dost was about to start or some such thing. And I didn't know anybody. And whatever I knew about queer people, that word also I didn't know. Excuse me. I only know gay and lesbian. And those days they used to say transvestite. So that word I had heard. But this was through films, world cinema, or through novels. But I had not expected anyone to be in my own family. So I was definitely surprised, but I was not shocked at all. It didn't really matter because she told me, and I could just see why she was telling me that she was nervous. And I said, why are you nervous? So she said, no, but I said, no, I know that you are the same person. She said, Amma, I'm the same person. I said, of course I can see that. How can she just change because her sexuality is different? So I told her not to worry. But along with that, I also told her, but I don't know anything about this world. So will you sort of tell me? Because I'm very curious. So she said, of course I will. And in those days, she beautifully explained to me. I always tell children that when you come out, just don't be against, be on a war path right from the beginning. Don't take it for granted that your parents are going to reject you. Try, explain. They may not have known things. If you understand a little, Debolina, I'm not saying that to you, of course, but I usually say it to people when they ask me, that you prepare yourself, think about your parents' background, and then you tell them, then you come out. Take help of anyone, friends or whatever. So, Shalini told me when she had just finished her graduation, and as I told you, I just accepted her, but she told me while there was no reason, but she told me, Amma, it is just a minority, it's like being a lefty. And how eyes are different color. like that sexuality is also different types. She literally explained to me in very, very simple words, which I immediately got. And this lefty and righty thing, I always give an example when I'm talking to parents that when I was young, the lefties were hit on their hand, eat with right hand. Now they don't. We don't care whether people eat with their left hand or play cricket with left hand. We are even proud of them. So things can change. I'm an optimist. So those days, the difficulties were not about accepting. She told her father, he accepted. All her family, all her friends, everybody accepted her. But I think it all started for generations. In our family, everybody always accepted everybody. So even accepting queerness was not at all difficult. We didn't care for other people's opinions at all, you know. So that was the thing. But what hurt me a little was that she told me that she had started feeling around when she was 14. She had boys as friends, girls as friends, but she didn't feel attracted towards boys as her friends did. And she told me, and Amma, wherever I looked, there was nobody I knew. There was nothing, no one who could explain to me. And holdings, films, novels, books, everything was about boys, girls, girls, boys, men, women, women, men. And therefore, I said, why didn't you come to me? And you know what she said to me? I'll never forget, I'm saying this here. You and Baba you were activists. You stood against emergency, you stood against this. People used to come to our place, intellectuals, this, that. But no one ever talked about homosexuality. It was like a thappad in my face, you know, because I realized that was true. That was true. And now I'm aware. And I tell younger parents also, or anybody, even heterosexual communities, that don't do this mistake. You don't immediately, if a child puts lipstick, doesn't mean that the child is going to be, a trans woman or something. Sometimes it's just curiosity. But just be alert. Just see the clues. I accepted her, but I had not guessed that she was a lesbian because she loved, Gabriella Sabatini, her poster. It didn't mean to me much. I didn't ask her not to, but it did not mean to me. And that realization that I lacked, I missed, I was missing as a mother, that really hurt me. That was the only difficulty, nothing else.
Thank you, Chitra. You're a wonderful parent and wonderful mother, and you taught so much to everyone else as well.
And
Thank you.
I just give me 1 second more, please. I must take this opportunity and say that whoever is listening to this program, if you are not out, please get the courage to come out, and then please send your parents to Sweekar. We will take care of the rest. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, I think if we have questions, we can just take some of those. Okay, so there are no questions. Seems to have been everybody been listening to it.
Thank you so much, Adrija. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your acceptance and coming out journey. Really became emotional because this is something, as I said, it kind of connects my own coming out journey and acceptance by my parents who accepted me recently. So yes, and to sum it up, I would like to put it up this way to all the parents out there that don't make your child do something which society approves. Make your child do something which they approve. In the end,